Okay, Rabbi Sai, let's get involved. Tzavah of Rav Yehuda Hachassid. Do we have to keep it? What's the deal with it? Some people are so makbid, some people aren't makbid. What's the story? Time to get it clear. The Tzavah of Rav Yehuda Nasi. Let's get started. So who was Rav Yehuda Nasi? So Rav Yehuda Nasi was around Bizman HaRishonim. That's when he's from. And he's quoted in Tzavas. So we could, I guess, call him Rishon. Now, he was the Rebbe of the Or Zarua. He was the Rebbe of the Smag. He was the Rebbe of the Rokeach. So, generally more halakhic, Paiskim, Rishonim, whatever. And these were big hitters in halacha. And Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid was the Rebbe. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid was known as a Chassid. That's what his name, Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid, which, is higher than Tzaddik, so to speak, on the levels. Not Chassidus. We're not talking about that. We're talking about well before Chassidus. But he was Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid. Now, he was also known as a big Baal Meifus. He was also known that he fasted every single day, including Shabbos. How could you fast on Shabbos? Well, for Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid, he was so disgusted with Taiva and Olam Hazeh that for him, his great oinig was to fast on Shabbos. That was his madrega. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid was obviously a very big hitter in Amr. Now, he had two famous works, two famous writings. One is the Sefer Chassidim, and one is Tzavas Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid, his last will and testament, so to speak. Now, the Tzavah has, between how you count it, somewhere between 50 and 70, roughly, different instructions. There's different ways of breaking it up. Some of these Tzavas of Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid are the type of things that everyone here has heard of, and some of them are the type of thing that probably nobody here has heard of. So we're going to see that there's different tzavas and different, familiarity with each of them. Some had more mazel, and some of them had less. So some examples that we're going to discuss later are, for example, just to get our tongues wet and understand what we're talking about. Everybody ever heard of the thing, don't marry a girl with the same name as your mother? Or a boy shouldn't marry a girl whose father has his name. You shouldn't have a father-in-law, son-in-law with the same name. Yeah, sure. Everybody's very makbid with that. Or don't use someone as a sandik twice in the same family. Meaning for two of your sons, you shouldn't use the sandik at the same time. You used your father once, don't use your father again. See, when you have two kids, two boys, it's not so difficult. Some people have 4, 5, 6, 7 boys, and then they're trying to figure out, okay, who do I make sandik now? Because we seemingly makbid on this Rav Yehuda Hachassid. This one's actually brought in Shulchan Aruch. We're makbid on the Rav Yehuda Hachassid not to use a sandik twice. Okay, next. So, do we need to follow the tzavah? That's the big question that I've been asked before. Many people ask, do we need to follow this tzavah? So, if you would ask me off the bat, I would think, no. I would think we don't keep, we don't keep everything, that every statement from Rashi, every statement from the Rambam, every statement from the Rajba. We don't keep everything that some great tzaddik, Bisman Rishonim, said. I'm not here to downplay who Rav Yehuda Hachassid was, but we don't keep everything that every great person said. So therefore, why in the world should we keep something just because Rav Yehuda Hachassid said it? What's the reason? I don't know. I would think we should follow the regular klalim. If it made it into the Shulchan Aruch, you better keep it. And if it didn't make it into the Shulchan Aruch, then you don't have to keep it. That's what I would think. That's what I would think should be the approach and the view of how to view Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid. Now, there's a couple of tzavahs that made it into the Shulchan Aruch. Those you should keep, and most of them don't. That is what I would have thought. But let's actually look to the evidence on the ground. What's going on? What do the Paiskim say? So we see very different approaches from different communities. We see that there's some communities that they shake from every word of Rav Yehuda Hachassid. How can you do that? It's Rav Yehuda Hachassid. And we see other communities where, they don't really pay that much attention to Rav Yehuda Hachassid. It doesn't really register. It's not important. I believe it used to be something that was very, very diligently kept by the Hasidim and the Heimisha community. And the rest of the world didn't really focus on it so much. And the reason why I say this is because when I look at the poskim from 100 years ago, the Hasidish poskim are way more involved discussing every last little detail. Rav Yehuda Hachassid, does that apply to this case? Does it apply to that case? Is this hester? Is that heter? Whereas in the Litvish poskim, there's much, much, much less material on it. So that's what seems to be. Now, as time has gone on, and we have had the boiling pot of society, and we've had the cholent bowl society of different communities and different people coming together, whether it's in America or Israel, etc. Therefore, there's been spreading. Once again, this is a theory of mine. I didn't see this written anywhere. But now it seems that Rav Yehuda Hachassid has become much more popular amongst many more societies. But there's still plenty of places that don't keep it. Now, did Sephardim keep it? So I don't know exactly whether Sephardim had the minhag of keeping it. I saw that Reb Chaim Pelagi says that there was the Magifa that happened he wrote somewhere which I never heard of. He said that Magifa happened because they weren't being makbid in Rav Yehuda Hachassid. That was the understanding of Reb Chaim Pelagi. Now, Reb Chaim Pelagi sounds pretty Sephardi to me. So I guess he expected people to be keeping it. And we see Rav Avadia is very involved discussing the truth. Now that I think about it, Rav Avadia is very involved discussing where Rav Yehuda Hachassid applies and not. I saw that there was discussion from the Rechida. So I guess it sounds like the Sephardim were makbid. Now the Noidem Yehuda was known as the big proponent against Rav Yehuda Hachassid. Why? What was the Noidem Yehuda's problem with Rav Yehuda Hachassid? He was a huge tzaddik. Why would Noidem Yehuda say that you don't seemingly have to keep Rav Yehuda Hachassid? So he says like this: as great of a tzaddik as you may appear to be, nobody can tell you to go against the Gemara. If the Gemara says something, that's final word. I don't care who you are. I don't care how long your Shemona Esrei is, but you cannot go against what the Gemara says. And, we've had bad scenarios. Shabtai Tzvi sounded like a huge tzaddik to many people. But he said things that are against the Gemara, and that's a problem. So, Zak Noidem Yehuda, I'm going to show you a bunch of examples where Rav Yehuda Hachassid is against the Gemara. So, the Gemara, for example, says it's a mitzvah to marry your niece. Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid says you shouldn't marry your niece. Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid says that a father and son shouldn't marry sisters. Well, guess what? The Gemara says there are a papa and his son married sisters. Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid said you shouldn't have a father-in-law and a son-in-law with the same name. And if you did it, change the name. And maybe there's hope. That's what Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid said. Well, wait a second. We see Gemaras where father-in-laws and son-in-laws have the same name. Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid said 2 brothers shouldn't marry 2 sisters. Well, we see this Gemara that says in a positive way, a case of 80 brothers marrying 80 sisters. I mean, not from one family, but there were 80 sets of brothers marrying sisters. So, meaning, sorry, I got to be clear on that. They weren't all one family, but they weren't each individuals. There was a group of 80, and some of them were brothers who were marrying the sisters. So there were brothers marrying sisters. Fine. Furthermore, the Noidem Yehuda explains we have 2 choices what to do with Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid. You can either tell me that Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid argued on the Gemaras, and in that case I'll throw Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid out and say that he's not relevant. I'll treat him like a Shapsai Tzvinik, so to speak. Or the other option is to say that Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid said these dinim only to his descendants. He didn't say it as a general call. He said it as special and specific to his descendants. Now, If he said the Klal Yisrael could continue having two brothers married to two sisters, and could have father-in-laws and son-in-laws with the same name, and etc., that's fine. It's just for my descendants it's a problem. The Noda B'Yehuda said that's okay. One could go and put new ideas on their descendants, but to go and say that it's for everybody, that would be against the Gemara. And Zakt and Noda B'Yehuda, Rav Yehuda Hachassid Be'etzem was a big tzaddik, was a great man, and therefore it must be that he only said it to his descendants and he didn't say it to Klal Yisrael. If you're a descendant, you have to keep it, Zakt Noda B'Yehuda, and if you're not a descendant, you do not need to keep the tzavah of Rav Yehuda Hachassid. And some people want to explain, Sefer Chassidim was for everybody, tzavas Rav Yehuda Hachassid was for his descendants. Now, I don't know, what does it mean to be a descendant? Is that specifically ben or ben? Is that any little piece? Let's say I have a 1/10% of Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid in me. Am I a descendant? It's hard to say, right? Hard to know. I'll tell you something, a statistical point that somebody once brought up with me, and I think it's emes. This is so not Chassidish. The Chassidim are going to hate this, what I'm about to say. Okay. Like this. When we're going back to, let's say, Rav Yehuda Hachassid, you're going back close to 1,000 years. So how many generations are we talking about? 35 generations, 40 generations? So if you think about it, everybody has two parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 3 generations. 4 generations back at 16, 5 generations, 32. 6 generations, 64. 7, 128. 8 generations, 256. 9 generations, 512. 10 generations, 1,024. Not such a big deal. Now, let's keep that going. Let's just drop the 24 to make the math easier. 11 generations is 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 32,000, 64,000, 128,000, 256,000, 500,000, a million. That's 20 generations. Now, if you do that another 10 generations, 30 generations, you're going to get to a billion. Now, there's no way that there was a billion Jews around 30 generations ago, so it doesn't make sense. So what's wrong with my math? What's wrong with me is because a lot of those people were the same people. They weren't all different people. There was probably back then, 30 generations ago, 2 million Jews, let's say, or 1 million Jews. And all of those million Jews were my grandfather and grandmother, because it just integrated both. Maybe you could separate the Sephardim on one side, the Ashkenazim on the other side. But let's say Rav Yehuda Hachassid was from the Ashkenazi side, then you have to say that every person alive 900 years ago who was a Jew, assuming that I didn't come from Gerim, that's my descendant. And therefore, we're all descendants of Rav Yehuda Hachassid. However, there's an argument to say that after 10 generations, you're not considered yichus anymore. The yichus is batal be'elef, so to speak, because you have 1,000 lines going to you once you go up 10 generations with the math I just said. Okay, very not Chassidish point. I'm just going to treat the people that call themselves descendants of Rav Yehuda Hachassid, the people that know, and if you don't know, you're not a descendant of Rav Yehuda Hachassid. So forget my litfish shot that I really like, but I'm going to put it aside right now, and we are all going to assume that we're not descendants of Rav Yehuda Hachassid. So, according to the Noda B'Yehuda, we do not need to keep Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid. Now, the Divrei Chaim, once again, more of the Chassidish side, says that the Noda B'Yehuda needs to ask Mechila from Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid. It's not true, you can't say such a thing. Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid was said for everyone. Okay, so how does he prove it? He proves it from the fact that the Shulchan Aruch and the Poskim bring down certain items from the Tzavah of Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid, shows that obviously the Noda B'Yehuda was wrong. That's what the Divrei Chaim says. Okay, but how do you address the questions of the Noda B'Yehuda? That how could you go against the Gemara? So they want to say either maybe the Gemara focused on what's Aser, and Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid was focusing on Eitz Tova, which once again lowers the degree of Isser, so to speak, or idea of Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid if it's just the Eitz Tova, but that's one option. The other option that I saw the Pachacha suggests this, that maybe there was Mishana Tvayim. There was change of nature. Bismana Gemara, these things weren't dangerous. It wasn't dangerous for a father-in-law and son-in-law to have the same name. But by the time the Rav Yehuda Hachassid came around, at that point, now it was already dangerous. Okay, so nowadays maybe it's not dangerous. We don't see it to be dangerous. Or maybe it is. Who knows? Who could tell who's keeping cheshbon of who's getting sick? I don't know. But it doesn't sound so strong. Okay, I don't know. So do we have to keep it? So many were very makpid on all the tzavas. Historically, there were certain communities that were very makpid. The Kutzker Rav used to always say, he had in his clever way of presenting things, Halavai, I wish that the Rav Yehuda Hachassid would have put the Aseres HaDibros into his tzavah. Because if he would have put the Aseres HaDibros into his tzavah, people would actually keep the Aseres HaDibros. Because you obviously where the Kutzker was from, Kutsk actually, they were very makpid about keeping the tzavah of Rav Yehuda Hachassid. And we see Rav Yashiv, he was very makpid about keeping Rav Yehuda Hachassid. Rav Chaim Kanievsky was very makpid about keeping Rav Yehuda Hachassid. Whereas in contrast, we see other, Rav Moshe Feinstein wasn't so concerned about keeping Rav Yehuda Hachassid. Rav Moshe, he took 2 son-in-laws with the name Moshe. You believe it? So Rav Moshe Feinstein took 2 son-in-laws with the name Moshe. One of them, I heard that he told his daughter to start calling him Morris. He had a name Moshe something with an S. I don't remember what it was. And he told his daughter that she should instead of calling him Moshe, call him Morris. Which we're not going to give out the whole other shayla about using Jewish names, not Jewish names, which, that's somewhere where it's a little difficult to me, because I kind of use a not such Jewish name, even though it's a Rosh Tevis for a Jewish name, Tzarchin. But Moshe took a son-in-law with name Moshe, and his daughter called him Morris. I don't know the other Moshe, which is Moshe Tendler. I don't know if that daughter did the similar idea. I'm not sure. But Lemaisa, he obviously wasn't super makbid on this. And also Rav Scheinberg, he took a son-in-law named Chaim, so he wasn't so makbid on this. The Chassam Sofer, now Chassam Sofer I would have thought would be very makbid on this. Chassam Sofer, Hungarian, Heimish. I would have thought the Chassam Sofer would be makbid on this. So the Chassam Sofer offered the Maram. The Chassam Sofer's name was Rav Moshe Sofer, and he offered the Maram Shik to be his son-in-law. And the Maram Shik asked the Chassam Sofer, I'm very honored, but is it okay? Because, my name's Moshe also. So is that okay? And the Chassam Sofer said, no, you're right, better not. And let's not go through with it. And he didn't end up taking the Maram Shik as his Edom, as his son-in-law. And then the Chassam Sofer went and took a different Talmud by the name Moshe as his son-in-law. Now, what do you make with that? So many want to explain that the Chassam Sofer said, listen, if you're makbid, then be makbid. And if you're not makbid, then don't be makbid. It seems he himself was not particularly makbid. Now, the Tzemach Tzedek says, one more point also, there may be, the Tzemach Tzedek says that the Baal Tanya was not makbid on this. Why was the Baal Tanya not makbid on this? Because it's against the Gemara. And if it's against the Gemara, the Baal Tanya wasn't makbid. This is very interesting. All the Chassidim were makbid, but the Baal Tanya himself apparently wasn't makbid. I heard that in Ger, they're not makbid on this. Father-in-law and son-in-law having the same name, they're not makbid. The Shev Yaakov says you should be makbid, but don't break don't break a shidduch for this. Meaning, if you already made the shidduch, don't break it. The Marsham says that if the name isn't exactly the same match, therefore it is okay. And by the way, the Chassam Sofer told his son-in-law Moshe to add in the name Tovia. So he called him Moshe Tovia. The Sanza Rebbe says, I don't care, even if it's not exact, it's still a problem. Doesn't need to be exact. The Satmar Rebbe, the Arugas Baisin, and the Chassam Sofer all say, if a good shidduch comes around, chop it, take it, and change the name. That's perfectly fine to do. Now, if the father or mother isn't alive anymore, So L'maisa, we aren't makbid. Now, if you don't use the name Most are Mekel, meaning let's say he has the name Moshe, but he goes by Morris, or he has the name Moshe and he goes by Mel, then most people are not makbid, and L'maisa, we're Mekel. Now, actually, I have an interesting case. I have a friend who's the opposite. A guy that I know, he was always known as Aaron. He grew up in a place where it wasn't that he was Aaron and called Aaron. It wasn't a Josh, Yeshua, Aaron situation. His name was Tovia. But he grew up in a place where they used non-Jewish names, and his parents gave him the name Aaron. And then he married a girl whose father's name was Aaron. I don't know whether he was called Aaron or called Aaron, but his name was Aaron. And he was Aaron. Not quite right. At that point, he picked up Tovia and started going by Tovia, L'chayra. That was the right thing to do. Now, weiter. Now, there's three pshatim as to why this is a problem for the son-in-law and father-in-law, or mother-in-law and daughter-in-law to have the same name. One pshat is that it would be uncomfortable for the parents. Now, if the parent isn't alive, that's fine. And once again, if you're not using the name, part of the uncomfortableness is if the father's name is Moshe and goes by Moshe, and the daughter goes and calls her husband, Moshe, Moshe, with the father around, it's uncomfortable. But if one of them don't use the name, or the father's not alive, then that would seemingly be okay. The second pshat is that you won't be able to name after the father. Once again, life expectancy used to be, let's say, 40 once upon a time. And therefore, usually the child will have a kid when the father was no longer alive. Meaning, generation 2 would give birth to generation 3 when generation 1 was gone. And you would want to name after generation 1, but you wouldn't be able to. Now, nowadays we have longer life expectancy. And therefore, Baruch Hashem, normally, we're not naming after the we're generally not naming after the baby's grandparent. Generally, we name after the baby's great-grandparent very often. So would that be an issue? It's a little bit hard to say because the father of the chassan is a makbid about the grandchild. Usually, he's expecting to outlive that. But when fast forward another 40 years or whatever, and now you won't be able to name after the great grandfather because it's the grandfather's name. So I'm not sure how much we gain. Now, if the father has already passed away, generation 1 already passed away, then this wouldn't be an issue. And the third issue is ayin hara. Something doesn't look right. Moshe, there's some ayin hara. I don't know exactly. I can't explain ayin hara because I don't really understand ayin hara. Now, if he isn't alive, the older generation, the father of the chassan, so there's no ayin hara. Don't worry. Now, if it's and if the name isn't used, people don't know that's the guy's name, then l'chayr there won't be ayin hara, because apparently ayin hara is based on how other people view it, and if we don't know, nobody knows that that's the father's name, so l'chayr ayin hara is not an issue. The Yismach Moshe and the Avnei Tzedek say that if they use nicknames, it works. So I don't even l'chayr, even if you can figure out what the name is, meaning if it's Yeshua and they call him Josh, it's a nickname, l'chayr, it works. I didn't say I'm explicitly so close, Yeshua and Josh, but l'chayr, it works. Rav Yehuda Hachassid says that one shouldn't have the same name as their mechutin. Now it's interesting, this one, the oilam is not makbid on, and once again, it's seemingly against the Gemara. The Satmar Rebbe and the Kloisenberger Rebbe said we are makbid about this. Once again, there's Gemara against it. We're not makbid about mechutanim, and I think the oilam is not makbid. Rav Yehuda Hachassid says that two brothers shouldn't marry two sisters. Now, once again, this is against the Gemara, as we pointed out. So the Kaf HaChaim and the Chida are machmer. Even though it's against the Gemara, you still shouldn't have two brothers marry two sisters. Rav Shmuel Salant, the Chelkas Yaakov, and the Tzitz Eliezer are all mekel, because if you have a Gemara, they are mekel. And I know people that have done this. Rav Yehuda Hachassid says that don't name your kid Yehuda, and don't name your kid Shmuel. Oh, by the way, something that I forgot to mention before, which is also strange with the son-in-law thing. Apparently, Rav Yehuda Hachassid took a son-in-law by the name of Yehuda. So he didn't keep his own rules. I don't know what to make from this. It sounds very strange to my litfish brain, but I don't know. Apparently that's the story. I don't know. Okay, so Rav Yehuda Hachassid, he said you shouldn't name your kid Yehuda or Shmuel. Now, interestingly enough, his name was Yehuda, and he named his son, guess what? Drumroll, please! Shmuel. So, what do you do with that? And furthermore, we see the Gemara uses the name Yehuda and Shmuel. So, it's kind of against the Gemara that you shouldn't use the name Yehuda and Shmuel. So, the Shem Aryeh brings down further the Marsha. What was the Marsha's name? So, the Marsha's name was Shmuel ben Yehuda. And Zak the Shem Aryeh, the Marsha was even a descendant of the Nodim Yehuda. And he was Shmuel and his father, from his father's side. So, and he was Shmuel ben Yehuda. So what is going on here? And definitely the world uses the name Shmuel and Yehuda. It's very accepted. So the Shem Aryeh wants to explain it's only when you name directly after Rav Yehuda Hachassid, that, or after his son, Shmuel. I don't know if Chassid was his last name, but that is the only way that there's a problem. But using the name Yehuda and Shmuel would not be a problem. Now, something interesting, Rav Shlomo Zalman in his beautiful way, he gives the pshat. He wants to say, you know why Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid did this? He didn't want a couple of generations down in the family, the big fights, that all his descendants would want to use the name Yehuda and use the name Shmuel after Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid and after his son. And there'll be, the other side is going to want to name after their Zayda. So he said, don't name after Yehuda, don't name after Shmuel, in order that there won't be fights in future generations. That is how Rav Shlomo Zalman sees things. Now, there's a story brought down that Rav Shimon Schwab wanted to open up a yeshiva in a certain city that never had a yeshiva. It was in the district of Schweben. I guess that's where the name Schwab probably comes from, because it was in the district of Schweben. And there was no yeshiva there. He really wanted to open it. It was early 1930s. And he applied for all the permits, like a good, Yekesh Rav, all the permissions and all the permits, and everything was exact according to the law, with every right, with every permission. He opened up a yeshiva. The day that he opened the yeshiva in Schweben, 2 hours after he opened the yeshiva, a guy who was a friend of the Jews came to Rav Shimon Schwab and said, I just want to tell you, you got to send everybody away. They're planning a pogrom tonight. So Rav Shimon Schwab said, what do you mean? This is legal. The police will protect me. We have a yeshiva. It's great. And he said, listen, I'm risking my life telling you this, but I'm just telling you they're planning a pogrom tonight. So they went there. Rav Shimon Schwab went to the police station and said he heard that they're planning it, and the police said, we heard that they're planning it as well. And I'll tell you the truth, we can't protect you guys. So you might want to run away. So after the yeshiva was open for 2 hours, that first yeshiva in Schweben closed down. One of Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid's tzavas reads like this: Ish me'eretz Schweben lo yigdal na'arim sheyisku yeshiva. Don't open a yeshiva in Schweben, even if you're Yekti. And Lamaisa, Rav Shimon Schwab's yeshiva in Schweben only lasted 2 hours. I don't know if Rav Shimon Schwab knew about this Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid, but that is a pretty wild story. Okay, so what's Lamaisa? Do I need to keep this Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid? So if it's your minhag to keep everything, continue to keep everything. If it's your minhag not to keep anything, so you definitely have what to rely on not to keep it. You have a right to continue not keeping it. Now, some have the minhag of keeping everything unless it's against the Gemara. If so, continue. Some have a minhag to keep everyone of Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid unless it infringes on a mitzvah. So, if that's the case, continue. Now, most of us, l'maisa tachas, don't know of any specific minhag. Are we supposed to keep it? I don't know. I heard, I came to yeshiva. I heard them talking about it. I once heard in a share. What's my minhag? I don't really know. I asked my father. He says, I'm not really sure. I think that a lot of us fit into that claw. Now, there are around 5 to 10 of the tzavas of Rav Yehuda Hachassid that people are generally machbid on. So, l'chayra, one should try to be machbid on those 5 to 10 that the minhag ha'olam is to be makbid on, and the rest of them, one does not have to worry. So let's go through these quickly. So let's first quickly run through the ones we already discussed, and then we're going to go through some that we didn't discuss yet. So father-in-law and son-in-law having the same name, the Maisa, the olam is makbid, but you switch a name, you're okay. Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, same thing, the olam is makbid. Mechutanim shouldn't have the same name, the olam is not makbid. 2 brothers shouldn't marry 2 sisters. I think we're not so makbid on that. Don't name your child Yehuda or Shmuel. The olam is not makbid on that. Don't start a yeshiva in Schwaben. Keep that. Do not start a yeshiva in Schwaben. Let's discuss some more. So there's a well-known tzivah. Don't make somebody a sandik. Don't make your friend a sandik twice for your children. So that people are makbid to keep. Most people do not make somebody a sandik twice. But what do you mean in certain Chassid it says the Rebbe is always sandik? How are you going to get around that? So the Pshacha gets around that by says, don't make your friend a sandik. The Rebbe, you don't make the Rebbe a sandik. The Rebbe is the sandik. So if the Rebbe is the sandik, you're not making the Rebbe a sandik, it would not be a problem. Another possibility is don't make your friend a sandik twice. Oh, you think the Rebbe is your friend? You think you're equal to the Rebbe? He's not your friend, he's the Rebbe! And therefore, maybe that's why certain Chassidus have the Rebbe, he could be the sandik twice, 3, 4, 5 times. Okay. Next Rav Yehuda Hachassid that people know is don't cut the hair of your head or of your beard on Rosh Chodesh. And also don't cut your nails on Rosh Chodesh. So, the Maisa, it's not brought in the Shulchan Aruch. The Poskim do discuss it. Some follow the Tehillah David, that for a mitzvah, you could do it on Rosh Chodesh, but Stam, you wouldn't do it on Rosh Chodesh. So when you have a random Tuesday Rosh Chodesh, no. But if you have an Erev Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, maybe yeah. Some actually want to do somewhere in between. If you have a Friday Rosh Chodesh, so, just do it on Thursday. What's the big deal? Take your shave on Thursday. But if it's 2-day Rosh Chodesh, Thursday, Friday, you're going to shave on Wednesday, you're not going to be well kept for Shabbos, then you go and take that shave on Shabbos. I'm not sure the statistics of who keeps what. Now, here's one that people keep. Don't completely close up a door or window. Why? Because the shadim, don't mess with the shadim. The shadim need a way out. And if you close the door or window, you might lock them in, so to speak, and they're not going to be so happy. So this one is that people really keep this. Maybe because they were scared of shadim, and Rav Yehuda Hachassid mentions the reason of the shadim, I don't know. But the post can say, as long as you make a little hole, it's okay. So sometimes people will close up a window, drill a teensy hole in there, and that will be okay. The Pachacha says you could even, the Shivim Tamarim, which is a sefer written on Rav Yehuda Hachassid, says you're allowed to, let's say, put a picture over that hole. It's not a problem. You can cover it up. Now, another one of the tzavas is don't destroy an oven and use the place. So the Chidah and the Marsham bring this. Now, most of us have never heard this. The pashtus are modern day ovens. We don't destroy them. We just unplug them and bring them outside. So the Chayra, this din does not apply to our modern ovens. The Munkatcher says even with our modern ovens, L'maisa, you shouldn't put a bed in the place. Oh, I forgot to mention it's don't destroy the oven and use the place. So he says, okay, you're okay destroying the oven, you're even okay using the place, but don't put a bed there. That's a little too much. There's a Rav Yehuda Hachassid that says 2 married brothers shouldn't live in the same city. A lot of us do this. Now this is a little complicated because the Sefer Chassidim, also written by Rav Yehuda Hachassid, says 4 brothers or 4 sisters shouldn't live in the same city. So what is it? Is it 2 brothers or is it 4 brothers? And does it apply to girls or not? Or it's unclear. How do we reconcile this? So one way of it is saying for the general public, it's a problem 4 brothers. For my descendants, 2 brothers. That's one way. That's probably how the Nodim Yehuda would do it. Now, the Arugas Boisim says that it means you can't have two brothers living in one house, and you can't have four brothers or sisters living in one city. Apparently, somebody asked Chaim, could you have two brothers living in one apartment building? And he said it's kedai not to. Ain't a kedai. Now, what's the problem of two brothers or four brothers living in a city? So Dark Yeshuva says the issue of ayin hara. And someone, I don't remember who it was, explained that it's only a problem if they grew up there. It's only a problem if they came from a different city. The Liebers, they're taking over, whoever it is, they're taking over that town. That's going to create an ayin hara. So therefore, if it's many people coming on that one town, that would be a problem. From a different town, it would be a problem. L'maisa, Rav Vosner said that this is a gezerah that the tzibur cannot handle, and therefore it doesn't apply. You can have four brothers living. You have a city. 3 brothers moved to Lakewood already. Now, the 4th brother wants to move to Lakewood. You're going to say he can't move? No. We don't keep this. I don't think the minhag is to keep this. I don't think people are makbid on this, as far as I know. That is the basics for Rav Yehuda Hachassid. There's obviously many more Rav Yehuda Hachassids, because, I've done, I think, 11 or 12 of them. So there's another like 40 or 50. Maybe I'll devote another share going through each one individually. But those are the ones that you really heard of. There's other ones which you probably never heard of. I'll throw a couple there. Make sure, do not ride a horse on a boat. Do not shecht geese in, was it Tishrei, I think? Maybe Tavis? One of the other. Do not shecht geese. Be careful. I don't think we're makbid on those. Women should start off nursing on the left side. I do not think we're makbid on that one. And many others. Those were just some of them off the top of my head. There's many, many more. The Maisa, most of them, we are not makbid. And Mitzvah, do as your minhag is. And either way, have a great week. And that's it for Rabbi Yehuda Hachassid.